My name is Shannon Anderson. I am the curator of the exhibition Circling the Inverse Square. It brings together the work of 6 Canadian artists who all have very experimental processes in their work and explore universal quandaries about the world around us. So a lot of the works in this exhibition have a very experimental sort of approach to art making, in the sense that what you see is often very research-based, comes out of a long process, and I think the results that you see don't necessarily answer any questions, but raise questions and raise consideration about issues. Or looking at concepts of things that are sort of everyday occurrences, like the way, for example, looking at sound and the way that sound phenomenon can be expressed in a visual form, how you can map sound and create, give sort of a visual quality to sound. And to light as well is also something that recurs again and again through the exhibition, looking at the qualities of the way light play with the way we understand the world around us and confuse our understanding, or the way that we perceive light can be much more complex than we realize. There are 2 works by Carolee Fuglam in this exhibition. The first is called Out Here in Space, which is a series of photographic works. And the second is one called Somewhere Behind My Heart, which is an installation created with monofilament. So the 2 pieces are related to each other and sort of work in tandem. These particular photographs are intentionally somewhat vague in terms of what you might think the content is behind them. But I think if you look at them closely, what might at first appear to be possibly celestial bodies or constellations in space are actually details taken from the artist's skin, from her back, and sort of the collection of pores that you can see, and freckles and markings on the back. And then in the sculpture that you see, those same markings are shown in a pattern on the floor. There's a series of weights that you can see spread out along the floor, and they echo those same markings on a larger scale. And there's a webbing that's connected and almost rises up from those markings that the artist has hand-woven out of monofilament. Almost looks like a spider's web that she's created. And what's also guiding the shape is what you see on the top of the installation. If you look closely, you can sort of see a series of places where the monofilament has come together. And those points are actually related to constellations in space, in the skies. And they're positioned to actually relate to the sky above the gallery, above us in Kitchener at that time of the year. Taking an almost imaginative understanding of how we could possibly connect in the world as a whole. These are photographs by Jessica Eaton from the Seafall series, which is an ongoing series that the artist has been doing for a number of years. What I think is interesting about this series is that people aren't too sure what they're looking at when they see this work, whether it's photographs or painting. They're photographs, but they're not digital. There's no photoshopping that happens. Everything that you see happens inside the box of the camera. The artist sets up a scene in her studio consisting of painted wooden blocks, but painted in white shades of gray and black. So everything that the artist sees in her studio is monochromatic, and all of the light, or all of the color that you see in the final image, happens inside the box of the camera when the artist is exposing the film and adding additive primaries of red, blue, and green as color filters to the image. And through the process of re-exposing the scene many times, she's able to produce the series of colors that you see in the final image. This is an installation by Richard Sewell called Where Local Circling. Richard Sewell has been developing this Where series over a number of years, and this is an installation that's particular to this exhibition, hence the title Where Local /Circling. And in this series, he's exploring and developing a very personal set of symbols, an inventory of symbols to describe the way we understand space in terms of things that are close to us in the middle ground and distance, and trying to give a form to those. And I think in keeping with the fact that these perceptions of space are sort of very fundamental and everyday, he's chosen to articulate his set of symbols in Home Depot materials. So everything you see, the the tarps to the silicone that he's used in creating this elaborate system all comes from your local Home Depot store. This is an installation by Marla Hlady called Sound Balls, Dance Halling. It's a new piece that she's developed with a musician named Eric Chenot. And the piece plays with our idea of sound and rhythm. There are two amplifiers, two sound sources, and two sound balls. What's happening with the sound balls is that the artists are changing the relationship and breaking down how we conceive of sound and rhythm. So you're allowed to pick up each ball and move it around in space. And when you do that, it actually changes the nature of the sound that you're hearing. So something that starts out as quite even, and it'll come off and on, but as you're moving the ball in space, it takes something quite regular and morphs it and changes the pitch. And it can be quite subtle changes or quite dramatic, depending on how quickly you move the ball. This is a piece by Charles Stankiewicz called Gravity's Rainbow. And what you're looking at is actually a bit of a trick of the light that happens when there are two light projectors that are casting two thin beams of light across the grooves of a record player, and there's a reflection on the wall that might bring to mind Saturn's rings as they're moving through space. The title Gravity's Rainbow actually comes from a novel by Thomas Pynchon, who is an American novelist that was published in 1973. It was sort of an epic novel dealing with World War II and rockets and metaphysics and a whole mesh of things. And the book came out in 1973, at the same year that Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon came out as well. And Dark Side of the Moon is one of the records that is playing in the installation. The sound that you hear is coming from the last groove of the record, which is meant to sort of give the sense of maybe deep radio transmission, communication from space. And so the artist is exploring the idea of how we as individuals can potentially communicate with the world, or how we've tried to do that and make sense of the world beyond. There are three works in this exhibition by Adam David Brown. One is called Eclipse, the other is called White Noise, and the third is called Nowhere. There are three separate works, but I think they work together and speak to similar issues in terms of Adam's practice of exploring ideas of infinity and invisibility and the edges of human perception. In Eclipse, the work is actually created on a chalkboard where he has densely layered mathematical or scientific and formula that speak to the likes of Stephen Hawking or Einstein, and gathered them up in layers so that they become unreadable. And they're all gathered around this one space of nothingness in the center, a black hole. This one is called Eclipse, and it references a few different possible forms. One is, of course, a solar eclipse where all you see around the edges here are light or illumination, potential illumination. But I think it also deals with the idea of eclipsing our own knowledge of what lies beyond, and the idea that physics hasn't uncovered a theory of everything, that we're still in the dark, so to speak, about what the world really is.